Hey, welcome back to the HODL review. Today we are going to dig into Ripple and XRP. What I want to focus on today is where Ripple is going from the adoption phase into the growth phase. Actually, this was also in one of their latest blog posts on their website. What is this all about? What's going on with David Schwartz announcing, well, not announcing, but putting out a post specifically going over a lot of the features, facts, focus of what Ripple is all about, what XRP is all about. And that's really what we want to cover today because you know what? We've talked so much about Ripple XRP. What is the founding or the foundation, the principles? What is their directive? What is their mission? What is it really all about? And there's so many others on YouTube that are always looking for some secret file, some hidden meaning, when in fact, all of the content is laid out in black and white right in front of everybody's eyes because you know what? Ripple is a company working towards an objective. And it's not just some random objective. It's actually a very clear stated objective that we've all discussed. We've talked about the technology. We've reviewed their work towards adoption over the past couple years, which has been primarily focused on, guess what it is? Cross-border payments, international cross-border payments. That's been their focus from day one. And really, that's still their focus today. There hasn't been much of a shift, much of a change within that. But we're going to dig in to these exact ideas because you know what? Many of these ideas were just expressed in David Schwartz's very own words from not only his Twitter post, but from another post that he just recently put up. And we're going to discuss all of that right now.
And now, the HODL review with Jeff on the chain.
Boom, and then we come back. So I think it's apropos for us to dig right into, and I think I'm going to go first to the Ripple insights because I want to dig into this. I want to look at what their thought process is when they talk about adoption to growth. Then we're going to dig in to David Schwartz because he put up what I think are some really big deals. All right, so let me go over here and we're going to share the screen. We're going to transition and it's going to go like this. Whoop, there we go. So now we're over here. We're going to look at what this all really means. Blockchain and Payments Report 2020 from adoption to growth. Now, this was just a couple days ago, October 15th. There's some really important facts that we're going to pull out of this. Now, number one, when you look at it in terms of globally, global regions, and all the global regions that they pointed out, North America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, Asia Pacific, pretty much everywhere. The familiarity with blockchain and crypto is somewhere between 82 to 94%, whereas the positivity, the positive sentiment is still on the rise. It's somewhere between 62 to 75% with blockchain and 52 to 73% in 52 to 73% in blockchain and 62 to 75% on cryptocurrency. Now we're seeing growth, we're seeing trends, but I think the most important part as we look in on this, there's three primary major takeaways from this report. That's right here. We're going to read it. Number one, blockchain payment solutions are scaling. They're growing. They're building. There's a lot in this space right now developing the blockchain payment space. Why? Because it's already been identified, it's already been realized, it's already been recognized all these years that not just the cross-border solution issue is a problem, but domestic payment solutions are also relatively a problem. Getting instant settlement in the domestic markets, moving money quickly. There are some solutions out there, but they're a little kind of hodgepodge. But the goal here, the objective here is to streamline it, bring it to everybody. Number two, digital assets are increasingly being considered for facilitating payments. Again, yes, around the world they're looking, how can we make payments easier? How can we streamline it? How can we make it transparent? How can we make it cheap? Well, they're pairing it with blockchain tech. So here we are, digital assets, blockchain tech. Number two. Number three, Industry innovators are realizing significant growth even with the issue that we're facing right now. So this space has been booming, booming. So then they get into scalable blockchain payment solution. So here, right, this is really impressive. You read through this, you see the growth, you see the development that is the payment space. Now, again, I go back, I look at all these other YouTubers. Oh, I found this secret document, and it must mean this, and it has to mean this because you're gonna have adoption, and it's gonna scale, and this is why because it's hidden, and this whatever, and it's gonna be amazing, and all of a sudden we're on the moon with XRP's blown up. That's not how it works. This is how it works. Black and white. They issue a report. They're talking about it. There's a recognition. They went through this adoption phase, and that's why it was so important. They said adoption to growth. Adoption phase, getting the word on the street, getting institutions to buy into it. Governments are recognizing it. Institutions are recognizing it. They're realizing the positive potential that is blockchain payment. That's adoption phase. You're not having global adoption phase yet. That's in growth phase. Growth phase is you need to grow your market. They've already identified the need. They've seen adoption. Now we're in the next phase. So here it says signs are positive that the flywheel is very much in motion across the globe when it comes to blockchain payment solutions. There you go. Slightly over 1/3 of the report's respondents currently use blockchain tech for sending or receiving payments. Whatever. Whatever the number is, the respondents, 1/3 of respondents, that's a pretty decent number. But I don't know. I didn't read through to figure out how many people actually responded to it. But still, that's a decent number. They're actually sending or receiving payments using blockchain tech. It's segmented into business type. These are all the businesses we know: digital banks, retail banks, money transmitters, payment providers. This is the space. This is where it all begins, right? So here, cross-border payment. Cross-border payment, as we know, arguably is the biggest need right now. That's like the starting point, right? So it says as blockchain payments solutions continue to solve for many of the pain points related to cross-border payments, adoption has grown steadily. In fact, real-time settlement for cross-border payments is seen as a business necessity for many, as well as in demand by consumers. Of course, businesses want it, consumers want it. It has to happen. The current mechanism of the legacy systems don't work. Everybody knows that. That's why blockchain is scaling. But they're scaling beyond just the payment sector. This is beyond the Ripple. This is beyond XRP. But this is blockchain in general. There's two prominent areas: trade finance and capital markets. I mean, we see the writing on the wall again, right? They're beginning to tokenize securities. They're beginning, real estate. There's so much developing and growth that can happen in this space. Now, obviously, speed is one of the big issues. So, here, across the board, the report found openness to more digital asset types. So a mix of like Bitcoin, central bank digital currencies, stablecoin. So obviously speed for both domestic and cross-border payments is one of the key points that's needed. Now, I get into this, and why this report is so critical is because we're talking about Ripple XRP. Ripple is currently one of the very few, maybe you count them on one hand, that are focused on solving this problem. Stellar is solving the problem. R3 is working on solving the problem. There's a couple others out there, but the two primary at the top of the list, you have Ripple with RippleNet, and then you have Stellar. Stellar has XLM, but we're starting to see what's happening with Stellar as it gets some adoption within the CBDC space. Now, the CBDC isn't the end-all be-all that everyone is making it out to be. And we're going to see that when we talk a little bit more about David Schwartz and his statements. And if you followed any of our conversations and you followed our live streams, then you'll know, we're on the same page. We don't believe that the CBDCs are the end-all be-all. In fact, the CBDCs coming into play is one important step, still a walled garden, and we'll get into that. But here, what's interesting, industry innovation amid the issue that we're going through right now. So we continue to see growth in the space and development from I don't want to say a maturity perspective, but definitely more and more money is still piling into the space from the building side of things. and that's impressive. That's really, really impressive. So this is kind of a starting point, so we kind of get a good basis. We get a good understanding of what is going on. Why is the cross-border payment space so relevant? Why are reports like this rolling out, and why is it so favorable? And that is, again, in black and white. There's no hidden agenda. There's no hidden narrative. There's no secret elixir. This is what it is. It takes time. It's developing. It's building, and it's still early. That's why we're moving into the growth phase. Now, let's bounce over to some tweets that David Schwartz put out, and then we're going to talk a little bit about a post that David Schwartz put out. And I think this starts tying everything together. So first and foremost, and these are snippets right from his writing, so when we dive into the writing, it's all going to kind of pull together, and this is what we're going to go through right over here. This was just posted. But look, I don't think there's going to be one world, or there's going to be one world fiat anytime soon. I agree 100%. No world fiat, no world currency. It's not realistic, not going to happen. And we've talked about it so many times before that each country is going to maintain their sovereignty, their currency sovereignty, their economic sovereignty. So even with stable coins, there'll be a lot of them. Yes, I concur. We already see a lot of stable coins. The thing is, with a stable coin, it's tied back to a fiat. So to make liquidity between CBDCs, other stable coins, and new tokenized asset classes, securities, DeFi, etc., there's room for a neutral, jurisdictionless asset. Guess what? You guys know where that's going. So then we come over and dig in a little bit further. And then he goes on, he said, I think lots of digital and fiat assets will compete to play that role, and there's room for more than one. We're already seeing them. We see a lot of stable coins out there. We're going to see a lot of CBDCs out there. That's fine. That's the objective. That's what needs to happen. Governments aren't going to relinquish their control over their currency. I see the dollar's role as the world's settlement currency slowly shrinking and international commerce increasing. What we're going to see in his writing, and I concur with this, we're seeing external forces that are attacking the US dollar's role as a reserve currency, as a settlement currency. It's not going to happen overnight. Its role might be shrinking because there's going to be other competitive forces in the market. It's not going away anytime soon. But he says here, so we'll be fighting for a share of a bigger market. That's fine. That's part of growth. That's part of development. That's kind of the direction that things are moving in. Then we get down into number 2. Here it is. Potentially almost every asset could be a winner here. Even the dollar. A smaller share of a significantly bigger market can be an overall win. And that's exactly right. So as you start grabbing people by their bootstraps and you're pulling them up, you're pulling countries around the world, you're pulling up communities that are currently, impoverished, but they're impoverished because they're not able to participate in the banking space. We're talking about entire nation states that aren't necessarily moving in the right direction financially, economically. And now there's this opportunity. You're starting to see, this movement. As you start seeing the CBDCs, you get more stable currency in a lot of these countries. You allow people to build wealth. It's a game changer. Things are moving forward. But now you have CBDCs popping up. You have all these silos. You have all these walled gardens all over the world. You need to have the neutral asset, jurisdictionless asset, as you called it. So now let's move over. This is really amazing. So he just put this out today. Goes into, we had surgery, and now he's going back to work, whatever. So, but he digs into some points that I think are so relevant. Again, this goes back to no hidden agenda that's going to be discovered in some hidden document. There's going to be regulatory clarity by the government. That's going to help open things up. Before that happens, when we're in this growth phase, you have to understand the direction that this company is moving in, Ripple. And if you want to look at the potential value of the XRP, you look at the direction that this company is building in. They've built a technology that can and is using this digital asset. Now, without focusing on price, because with utility comes need. With that need of that asset, the price will inevitably increase. How much? Nobody knows. These guys probably have an idea. They know that it needs to be higher than where it's at right now. One important critical point to all of this, and it goes back to this other article that we were talking about. What is the one thing that countries are concerned with, especially for some reason in Latin America? But the Latin American currencies are very volatile. So they have a concern that even the crypto pricing is volatile. You look at Bitcoin, whoa, big swings, big percentages. Those big percentages are costly. You're seeing in the DeFi space major swings in valuation. But the one thing with XRP is volatility, stability. We talked about this just the other day with Mark Phillips, and it's really interesting because as you look at it, it's the lack of volatility, not necessarily stability, but reliability. XRP being a reliable token, because even those minor movements aren't major. You have a percent here, a percent there, up and down. Like in the FX market, you have percentages moving around. But when you have big percentage movement, you have big volatility. So even in the XRP space, when you're at 24, 25 cents, the market trends up, the whole market trends down. You have these marginal movements. But when you have whales coming in or you have some transitions, you don't see big, wide swings. And so there's the lack of volatility. You don't have a lot of volatility in the space. So that's a positive. That's a good thing. But then you come over here. So the first thing that he points out is, what is Ripple's objective, right? Ripple improves international payments for enterprise customers by building a modern, interoperable international payment and settlement system, RippleNet. We all know that. That's exactly what it does. It's based on blockchain tech. What's their ultimate goal? Their ultimate goal we call the Internet of Value. Interesting, right? Payments as easy as email, right? They want to make it, if you can send an email, a text, you should be able to send payments that way, and it should be quick. You should get it immediately. But what is their focus? Enterprise of all sizes and for consumers around the world. Not necessarily at the retail level, but they want to make payments easy. That's their objective. So here it says we're not going to build it by ourselves. They can't build it by ourselves. It's impossible. They can do what they do very, very well. And there's others that are going to do what they do well. That's why on the live stream with Mark Phillips, go back and watch that. You can see a link at the end of the video. The reason why it's so critical is that you see a distinct separation of the Stellar organization and the Ripple organization, XRP in this direction, working with big financial institutions, Stellar and XLM moving more into the retail space, the smaller micro payment. It's an interesting dissect, so they kind of go in their own directions, in their strength spots and their strength places. So, again, they're not going to build this by themselves. Now, he talks a little bit about CBDCs. Why are they necessary? Here's what he said, the good news. CBDCs can make domestic settlement faster, more reliable, and less costly. Yes, that's true. That's something they can do for their domestic market. Because in the legacy fiat space, there's still a little bit of legacy, dot matrix type, slowness to it. So the idea of digitizing the economies, even though we see, all of our money moves around kind of digitally, but through a CBDC and the digital, completely digital, trying to move away from all the legacy platforms that are running the economy right now, moving away from fiat, does make it more reliable, potentially less costly, potentially faster. Yes, reliable. I say because you have to have a solution for offline payments as well as online payments. Now, he brought this up. I didn't highlight it, but you can't have good international payments without good domestic payments, because for every international payment, the beginning stage of the international payment is domestic, the end stage is domestic. So if you have bad domestic payment structures, then what did you save? What did you do? So I like here he says an enormous amount of valuable commerce simply doesn't happen because international payments are so slow. I've seen this firsthand, and we've talked about it so many times on the show, on the live streams, Chip and I, on other videos, that international payments are critical. Having it seamless, having it transparent, having it rapid settlement occur at a low cost is so important. And business comes to a grinding halt sometimes because that isn't the case. So, he brings up again that there's typically a domestic transfer on each side. Again, if those don't work well, international doesn't work well. And so, it's obviously so important you have those two components that are needed. Countries that don't modernize their domestic system will not see the benefits of the revolution in payments. He sees this modernization, this movement, as a complete revolution in the payment infrastructure. We're seeing it all over the place. It's happening as we speak. There's a revolution in the payment space. Everybody's talking about it. We know it. But if you don't move in that direction and you don't modernize, you're still running on fiat or on legacy platforms. Your legacy platform is not going to communicate with the modern payment structure. So that's a problem. Definitely a problem. So, CBDC distribution will almost certainly have to happen through intermediaries, banks, wallets, fintechs. Central banks don't work with individuals. The local banks work with the individuals. Mobile wallets, looking for my phone, mobile wallets, are individual. Fintechs, online banking, work with individuals. The central banks don't work with you. The central banks are involved in different areas. There's going to be a potential argument that their overall need, their structure is going to probably change drastically. The need for them might not be as great. The overall brick and mortar banking structure might not be needed as much tomorrow as it is today as these structures all kind of come together. So I think that's really interesting. That's really telling. And he says here, in working to build modern international payments, we've discovered that the biggest obstacle is often the very last hop, getting the funds to the recipient in the domestic payment. So you have a problem. That last little bit can be problematic. How do you get it there? You still have to go through an ACH. You have to go ACH in, you have to go through ACH out, all these problems. But there's a lot of local domestic things that are transitioning. He brings up here the U.S. with the Fed now. But you have solutions like Zelle, but Zelle isn't functional in this process. Zelle is functional if you're moving money between people in the U.S., but once that international, it still needs to go ACH in the U.S. So we're years away from the Fed now or another solution like it. Now here's, to me, number 3 point is probably the most important out of everything, interoperability. So obviously the whole point and purpose of XRP, the XRPL, is interoperability. We know as these CBDCs build up and you have all these walled gardens, interoperability, connecting the dots is critical. What did he call it? What was it? Frictionless, neutral, jurisdictionless asset. A neutral, jurisdictionless asset. That's huge, right? So a neutral, jurisdictionless asset that is interoperable. That means it's connecting all the dots. It's connecting the pieces. It's important that these payment systems are also built on newer technology that are compatible with each other. They should be, right? But if they're not 100% compatible, you still need that intermediary. You hope that they are. Here he said, even if you imagine some future with a one world asset, it's not going to happen. Not in our lifetime. Not possible. Countries want sovereignty over their own currency. That's why they're developing CBDCs, because they want to control. They want to modernize, but they want to control. Forget about the one world asset conversation. Forget about the IMF creating some IMF stablecoin that everybody is going to work with. It's just not going to happen. That's not the reality on the ground. But he said either way, compatibility is the key. Yes. Compatibility, interoperability. The world's value is spread out today among systems that don't interoperate with a massive number of bespoke and quirky interconnections. They're band-aids. That's true. Yeah, it's broken. It just doesn't work well. And he's talking about in the legacy solution, in order to make it work, you need all of these people working within the system, and you can't hire more people as you bring, let's say you bring on more of these communities, bring on more countries that are going to be generating more wealth. You're going to, what are you going to hire hundreds of people? And that's what he brings out here too. You're going to have 100 payment engineers and dozens of treasury operators. It's that's not reality. Got to get rid of that idea. So there is definitely an opportunity here to bridge domestic real-time payment systems such as FedNow, the clearinghouse for USD, with powerful benefits for SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprise, and ultimately consumers around the world. He's focused on SMEs. He's not focused on retail. We're talking about consumers. We're talking about international cross-border payments. We're talking about moving big sums of money. We're talking about connecting CBDCs with one another, the rail that the CBDCs are going to flow through. They need interoperability. That's what he's focused on. So when you want to look at what can the XRP ledger do, what can XRP do, now you start seeing that, all the pieces kind of coming together, that transition. CBDCs won't be XRP. The Fed now is not going to be XRP. The IMF isn't going to work with XLM or XRP. They might build on Stellar, the privatized version of Stellar. They might utilize the XRPL, but the interconnectivity of all these pieces very likely can run on the XRPL. And that's exactly what David Schwartz is talking about. That's their vision. That's what they see. We've talked about it a lot. I kind of see that kind of a system. If it's moving in that direction, that's their objective. Whether it happens or not is yet to be seen. The trend is moving in that direction. That's why they move from adoption into growth phase, because in order to make all this stuff happen, you need to grow. You need to expand your market. The adoption part's already been happening. So the task, we need to build systems with common principles, just as the internet was built. That's interesting. In the beginning, the internet, all these computer networks, nothing connected. That's what the internet made computers interoperable. Let them connect. Everything transitions over the computer, over the internet. Didn't exist like that before. If you go back to the beginning of computers, they looked at having dumb terminals, and everybody logged into something to have terminals. And then the home PC market kicked in, and everyone brought a PC home. They said, no one's going to have a terminal. Now, basically, a computer is basically just a terminal to get online. Most people just live on a browser. They don't use the power of the computer, but this is the idea between the currencies. You need to have interoperability. I think it's so key. Payments and settlement are definitely in that pre-internet state. Great. These are awesome statements. There's still that huge mismatch today. It's walled garden after walled garden with very limited interoperability. And if you create CBDCs and you don't have the interconnectivity, you're basically going back to this exact problem. Nothing changes. It's the exact same thing. Liquidity is spread out, and enterprises need to keep money spread across the system because it's too difficult to move. They have to move money. It takes time. It's costly. So I like this. He said, so 2 problems we need to be mindful of. 1, stable coins are always going to be tied to a single fiat currency. Interesting. That's just what we're going to see. The US dollar has been the world's reserve currency. It's currently weakening, and it's been the reserve currency since the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. We start seeing it decline, and it's weakening as the world reserve currency. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. There's still too much going on from a political and a geopolitical or an economic political perspective. And this is exactly what he's saying as well. I don't think the USD being fully replaced as the world's currency is likely in the near term, not even over the next few decades. It's interesting, right? But the dollar has been weakening as the reserve currency, and he's focusing on this crisis that we all went through because it's created uncertainty. But then you have other countries like China and others that are rising up to try to put their influence and dethrone the US dollar as a reserve currency. These are the realities on the ground. It's interesting, right? Many sovereign countries around the world want independence from a system that gives jurisdiction like the US and the EU. They want sovereignty over themselves. That's the point. That's the point with all of that. That's why, they're attacking the US dollar as the reserve currency. It's not going to happen. You get rid of the US dollar as a reserve currency, the whole market's going to become unstable. That's just the reality. But here, we drastically need interoperability between these virtual currencies. Yes, 100%. Between the CBDCs, between other virtual currencies, it's a complete necessity. A CBDC by definition will carry the same capital control. So yeah, the CBDC is just like fiat, except it's digital, centralized, controlled by the government, or at least under some semblance of control by the government. At least that's what the anticipation is. Or if it's by the Fed, it's controlled by the Fed, but it's not decentralized in nature. But it still has the impact, just like fiat. It's going to be no difference. Everything's going to be the same, basically. But this is why, and I like what he says here. A world currency issued by a world jurisdiction that everybody uses for everything is a pipe dream. Exactly. The IMF isn't going to issue some global currency. Nobody's going to use it. That's not reality. The IMF has a purpose. Countries donate to the IMF. The U.S. donates, I think, 1/5 or no, it's 17%. So it's almost 1/5 of everything comes from the U.S. I think China's like 6%. U.S. is 17%. Not sure where the others fall, but the U.S. has the biggest share of contribution to the IMF and the bigger vote stake in where those assets get distributed. The SDR is a basket of currencies with a value, but that's where that necessity of that value of that SDR is to loan out to other countries that are in need, like South Africa, for instance, is borrowed against the IMF or from the IMF. They bailed them out. So it's an interesting variable, but not going to become a global currency. Now, the need for a neutral asset. So we talked about that, right? So this is going back to a neutral jurisdictionless asset. So this is really, really critical. This is really key. And I didn't realize I'm going like 32 minutes. There's so much in here. I had to go this long. It's kind of crazy. Kind of crazy that we're going this long. But so the need for a neutral asset. If you're looking at cross-border, the key factor is interoperability. Again, neutral interoperability. You need a neutral asset in between different CBDCs or your liquidity will be divided. So it's so, the ideas here, again, they're objective. If other assets such as securities around the world get tokenized, there's even more need for a neutral asset between multiple CBDCs and all these different new asset classes and new assets that are developing. It's so interesting. CBDCs are not going to usurp the role of universal settlement assets. Not going to happen. Again, they're creating silos. They're domestically driven. In order to create the cross-border payment, you have to take the CBDC of one country. You still need to convert it into the other. How are you going to do that when you have a silo? When they're not made, they're no different than a fiat currency in that case. They still need to be exchanged on the foreign exchange. So interoperability, a neutral asset, a jurisdictionless neutral asset. Interesting stuff. Here you have XRP and the XRP ledger. Why XRP and XRP ledger? Why not? I mean, look at this, right? The network has to be built for that role with interoperability taking priority over everyone. Do things our way. It has to be based on bridges, not on walls. Because right now, everyone's like, oh, you got to do it this way. It has to be this way. But the XRP ledger isn't that way. The XRPL has asset issuance built into the protocol, right? Issuance, authorization, payment, settlement, and exchange, all native operations with simple APIs. This is the purpose. The XRP ledger can't handle all the world's payments. He's not proposing a one network solution either, because that's not realistic, right? But here, the key here, because they're not handling the world's payments, they're handling the transaction. Here it says XRP can be the hub or the backbone that provides the fast international settlement piece. So again, they're not saying that the whole world, all the payments in the world are going to be using the XRP ledger or XRP. What he's saying here is that the XRP ledger is the neutral jurisdictionless asset that's going to create a frictionless, interoperable connection between all of the different assets, between the CBDCs. And XRP is going to create, and what he's saying here again, XRP can be the hub or backbone that provides the fast international settlement piece. So you need it, just like right now we're seeing it, right? We're seeing that XRP is critical in the entire process because XRP creates the settlement in the international, in the cross-border payment space. That's what's needed. It's still needed. All right. So he's saying here it won't solve the last mile problem, but will help with interoperability and concentrating liquidity so enterprises don't have to keep funds in every payment system. I mean, this again, you can go and you can read articles, you can try to look, you can try to figure things out and try to read into, all these facts and figures and whatevers, or you can look and say, hey, this is what they're saying they're doing. This is what they're doing. To me, it's pretty straightforward. This is how we've analyzed and dissected this over every video that we've done without going into too much hype, price prediction. They're in growth phase. Growth phase is going to take time. What's going to happen when growth phase hits? If XRP can be the hub or the backbone for international settlements and you start seeing the CBDCs and you start seeing movement of currency, the sky's the limit at that point. I mean, it could go up to 30 cents. It could be much, much higher. I mean, that's, I think, the point, right? So that's, I think I've taken up a huge amount of everybody's time over here, and we're running on 36 minutes. This was meant to be a 10-minute video. I think virtually impossible to put this into a 10-minute video. Maybe I should have broken this up into separate videos, but I'm thinking now that this might even be premiered instead of on a regular video. And now as you're all hearing me talk about this is what's going through my mind as I hit this 36-minute mark. So I appreciate all of you guys for watching this. I think this was a critical video to put together. And I really look forward to seeing you guys on the next one because we live stream every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and roundtables every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, both of those. And we're starting to roll out live streams again on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. So without further ado, I think we are out.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.